Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday and welcome to this week's webinar. This week's webinar is entitled The Magic of Language. I wonder if we think about language often enough. I wonder if we do. Because just think about it, language is how we communicate. It's how we communicate with everybody around us. It's how we communicate with ourselves as well. And this is one of the most important elements of the magic of language that I'd like to share with you today and have a little discussion about. Because how we communicate with ourselves really dictates the results that we get. So our language is how we get across to other people our concepts, how we conceive of things, our ideas, and our thoughts. And some of those can be very, very complex, and some of them can be very, very simple. And it's all down to the language that we use in terms of the message that people around us receive. So our language is really, really important. Have you ever been in a conversation with somebody and you've expressed a concept or a thought or an opinion, and the other person has completely misunderstood what you said? Now, who's responsible for that communication and for understanding it in the way that it was intended? Is it you, the communicator, or is it the person that received that information? Well, in NLP terms, we always say that the meaning of any communication is the response that you get. So as the communicator, we are all responsible for our own communication. So think about that. The meaning of any communication is simply the response that you get. So then we use different language to have our ideas accepted in a different way. And it's up to us to notice when our communication isn't working so that we can change it. And we can go ahead and communicate in a different way. So our language is how we influence people. It's how we negotiate. It's how we sell things, concepts, ideas, or indeed products and services. And it's how we engage others, whether that's in personal relationships or in business relationships. So we're using our language all of the time. Now, here's something to think about. When we communicate with somebody, the language that we use, the words, only makes up 7% of that communication. Just 7%. 38% of that communication is put across to the other person with the tone of voice that we use. And then 55% of that communication is carried unconsciously in our physiology and our physiological movement. So actually, when you communicate with somebody, you're giving them more information about yourself and the concepts that you're trying to get over to them unconsciously than you are consciously in your language. So that just shows us how important that 7% is to get right, because that's all we have, 7%. So let's have a look now. Let's start to think about how we go about constructing our communication. Those of you who've been on previous webinars, and thank you for joining us, will have seen this model before. But I'm going to go through it again because it's really important in terms of understanding the way we communicate and the way we form our language. So events happen around us. There is a world going on around us. We call it our environment. Whatever's happening outside of you forms your environment. And the detail of that environment is hitting your neurology. And it's hitting your neurology every second of every day in your waking state. And all that information comes into our neurology through our 5 senses. visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. So our sight, hearing, feeling and sense of touch, smell and taste. And that's coming into our neurology at a rate of about 2 million bits per second. And that's an enormous amount of information. Our conscious mind simply cannot deal with that quantity of information. And so we deal with it unconsciously. And some of it we delete, some of it we distort, and some of it we generalize. And all that information gets cut down. It gets filtered through our own personal filtering system. And so we start to view the world through our own lens. So what's left after all this deleting, distorting, and generalizing is only about 134 bits per second of information. That's less than 0.1% of what we started with. So the lens through which we view our reality, the world outside of us, our environment, really is our own, because we all do this differently. We all choose a different 134 bits of information according to what's important to us. That 134 bits of information then forms our internal representation, how we represent our world, what we think it's like, what we believe about it. So we've talked about this in previous webinars, which, by the way, you can watch anytime you like on our YouTube channel. So our internal representation starts to form our belief system, what we believe our world is like, what our reality looks like, and it's unique to you. That then develops your emotional state, how you feel about things. And then that in turn affects your physiology, your body. And this generates a feedback loop. So your physiology then affects your emotional condition, which then affects your internal representation. And all of that at the end produces your external behavior. So how does all this affect our language? Well, here's a concept for you to think about. And it's a bit of a mind stretch for early on a Tuesday morning, but stick with me. So let's consider what we've just learned. 2 million bits per second information going into our neurology. And then filtering process, heavy filtering at the unconscious level, gives us 134 bits per second of information. So, and here's the mind twister. Anything that you see around you, anything that you conceive of in your environment, all of what you conceive of as your reality is simply you. It's simply you because you filtered that information uniquely in your own filtering system. And you're looking at the world through your own lens. It's a lens of your own design. And so whatever you notice, whatever you conceive of in the world around you is simply you. So it's impossible for you to notice something in your environment which isn't you. Think of the world around you as a world of mirrors. Everything that you project out is reflected back at you. Perception is projection. So you can start having a bit of fun with this. So if you see somebody today maybe, and they're doing some sort of a behaviour that you think, I don't really like that, think, when have I done that? Or when have I conceived of that behaviour? Because if you've never conceived of it, it wouldn't be in your reality and you wouldn't be able to recognise it. So all of your reality is a reflection of you and your filtering system. So if we think about that filtering system and the internal representations that it creates, Our experiences come into our neurology through our visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory senses. And then we have what we call our self-talk, our AD, which in NLP terms stands for auditory digital. This is the stories that we tell ourselves in our mind, that self-talk, the constant chatter that's going on in your head. These are the words we use to label our experience, and this is where our language starts to form what we know about the world outside of us. So we have an internal representation, the result of a heavy filtering system, and then to make sense of it and to be able to communicate what's happening both to ourselves and to other people, we stick labels on it, and those labels are our words, linguistic labeling. So clearly, in NLP terms, neuro-linguistic programming, the language that we use to ourselves and others in order to construct our reality and make sense of it is very, very important. So the words that we use really are magical because they create something out of nothing. Our words create something out of nothing. Now, this is a concept that we look at quite often in NLP. It's called the map is not the territory. It's about labeling the label. So think about this. Everything that you conceive of within your unconscious mind doesn't accurately reflect the world outside. So consider this, that the words you use don't describe your reality, they create your reality. And that might seem a little bit, whoa, when you first think about it. But if you think about it in more detail, it's a great concept because it means that you can create your own reality by adjusting your language. By adjusting the way you describe your world, you actually create your world in a different way. So we have our experiences in the environment around us. And then we have our internal representation created through our filtering process. And then we generate the labeling. So whatever our internal representation is suggesting to us, then we add the labels to then make sense of it, communicate it, and create the reality around us. And this concept comes from Alfred Korzybski in his book, Science and Sanity from 1933. The map is not the territory. So when we create our reality, it's important to understand that our words don't describe our world and reality, they create it. This is where the magic comes in. So if you want to create a whole new reality for yourself, a whole new concept and idea of the world around you and what it is and how you experience it, then all you need to do is change the language that you use to describe it. Interesting. So how we construct our reality. We create what we observe. So through our filtering process, we filter down all the information that's coming into our neurology, and we create a lens through which we choose to view the world. And we observe the world with our minds. We observe the world through our filtering process. So the world is exactly what we believe it is. Whenever we observe something, we measure it. Our observations are measurements. We're putting a judgment filter on it because, of course, our values are part of our filtering system. And our values are how we judge what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. what we're willing to give time to, what we're willing to give energy to. And our belief system are constructed around those values. So when we observe something, we measure it. And whenever we measure something, we transform nothing into something. So by measuring and observing our world, as soon as you observe something, you've created it. It's in your reality because you've stuck a label on it. Think about it. Maybe right now as you're listening, you're sat on a chair or you're leaning on a desk. Now, that chair and that desk only exist because you've labelled them as a chair and a desk. Actually, all they are is a collection of molecules that are vibrating at a particular rate. And that vibration of molecules is what makes them appear to be solid. And actually, the biggest part of each molecule of your desk and your chair is space. They're actually not really solid. They're just vibrating and resonating at a certain frequency that has them appear solid. And because you've labelled them at some point in your life, you've been told that's a chair, that's a desk. That's what you now believe is your reality. So if we take that concept into a little bit more broader sense, think about what you believe about your reality, that actually you've created nothing into something, and how you could change that. We make measurements through our language. So by just controlling our language and using language in a very particular way, we can construct a new reality. We can change what we believe about the world around us and change it for the better, so that we can have a more positive reality. And when you have a more positive reality, that gives you energy, it gives you motivation. And then you can start to use your language to help others to notice a more positive reality just as you've done. So let's just have a very brief look, because we only have half an hour, at some ways that you can start to notice your language, understand the language that you're using, and then perhaps change it so that you have a more positive concept of your reality. Now, there are many constructs within our language that in NLP we've broken down so that we can make sense of it. So certain grammatical structures, and don't get worried, it's not about grammar that you used to do at school, because everybody goes, no, I hated grammar. It's simply a way of breaking down the language so that we can understand it better. So this is the very important linguistic side of neuro-linguistic programming. And when you come along and take an NLP coach practitioner training and a master coach training, we do a lot of work on language and how you create your reality through that language, and how you can really create magical change by getting in control of your language and learning how to use it really positively in a way that helps yourself and helps those around you. And the lovely thing about language is you use it every day. So it needn't be in a coaching or therapeutic setting where you can offer help to others. You're simply having a chat. So by some of the constructs that we use and patterns in NLP, you could affect some sort of change, a level of change in others, just by chatting to them over lunch or at the water cooler or over a drink. Now, wouldn't that be lovely? If you could have a positive change in somebody else's life just by chatting to them and using your language consciously. And how would it be if you could make your own life better? Your concept of reality more positive just by thinking about your language and changing it. So here are a few little hints and tips, and this is just a fraction of the thinking that we do about language at the intensive NLP coach practitioner training. Now, these particular words and use of words are what we call modal operators. And we have modal operators in 3 different sections. Modal operators of impossibility, modal operators of necessity, and modal operators of possibility. And these are very common little words. And you'll hear them all the time. You're going to hear them a lot today because now you're conscious of them. So, modal operators of impossibility are words like can't and won't. Modal operators of necessity are words like I must, I have to, I should. And modal operators of possibility, I can, I will. So think about consciously when you use these words. When people say, I can't, I won't, they're making a choice. And that little word, can't, it's used all the time. You hear it constantly. So let's just focus on that little word for a moment, because it has a very big impact. If we expand the term can't, what we get is can not. So think about that logically. Can not is somebody telling you I can do the process of not. It's a choice. They are choosing not. So think about all the times that you've said I can't do that. What are you actually doing? When you say I can't, you're choosing not. And that's fine, that's a choice. You're choosing not. And maybe that's absolutely the right thing to choose in that context or in that circumstance. You'd have to consider that. But what I'd like you to really embrace is that it's a choice. It's not something that's been imposed on you. It's a choice to choose not. And of course, won't is will not. I will do the process of not. Again, it's a choice. It's a decision that you're making. So think about that decision. Is it the right one? Not? Or is it just that you're being pushed a little bit too far out of your comfort zone, so you're choosing not? When we hear words of necessity, must, have to, should, this is your indicator where you or somebody else feels like they have no choice. So this is the world being imposed on them. I have to go to my job, which I hate because I have to pay the mortgage. I must do that or there'll be a penalty. Oh, I really should do that. And when you hear this, it's an indication that that person that's using this language feels they have no choice in life. Think about when you've said these things, when you've used these words. And what is it that's taking your choice away from you? And there'll be a limiting belief or a limiting decision there somewhere. You have a limiting belief that your life is being imposed on you and it's not a choice. So when you use these words, must, have to, should, just stop yourself for a moment and think, what is my choice here? Because when people say, I have to go to this job that I hate because I have to pay the mortgage and the bills, do they really have to go to that job? No, there's a choice, isn't there? They can leave that job. They can get another job. They can change their life if they choose to. There is always a choice. Whether you take it or not is down to your decision-making process. but there's always a choice. And there's always a way to change what you're not comfortable with, what you don't like. So listen out for these words, they're very telling. And modal operators of possibility, I can, I will. This is when somebody has chosen to be positively taking action. These are the words that when you've made a decision, you've made your choice, these are the words that give you energy and power. I can do that. I will do that. So listen out for these words today too, both when you use them to yourself and when you hear other people using them. Listen out also for that word, try. Yeah, that word, try. And when you think about try, it's a non-word. It doesn't really exist. Because there's no such thing as trying. You either do something or you don't. You might do something and the results might not be what you expected. However, you have done something. We don't try. We either do it or we don't. So think about how many times you hear someone say, I'll try. You either do it or you don't, regardless of what the results are. So somebody might say, well, there is try because I might try to do something and fail. Well, actually, that's still not trying. You've done it. You've taken action. The results didn't work. You did it. So there's no such thing as try. And we tend to use try as a way of saying no politely. How many times have you said to somebody, oh, would you like to go for a drink tonight? We're going down to the bar or the pub. And somebody said, oh, I'll try. That's a way of them politely saying no. So have fun with this. Listen today to all the times you hear somebody say, I'll try. They actually mean they're not going to. Because you either do or you don't. Listen to yourself. How many times are you going to say, I'll try today? And then my final little tip for today is to get rid of the word but from your language. Replace it with the word and. That tiny little word can be really destructive in your communications. Think about it. If you were to say to somebody, oh, you did a really good job constructing that report today, but wow, what does that do? That's right, it completely disregards what you've said before it. And somebody's heart will sink as soon as they hear the word but. Somebody might say, yeah, I agree with you, but. So do they really agree with you? Or was that just to appease you? So today, just experiment and try taking the word but out of your language and replacing it with and. And notice how much difference it makes to the way you respond to your language and the way other people respond to your language. It makes a really big difference, just taking out that tiny little word. Give it a go. It's my challenge to you today. No word try, no trying, and no but. Give it a go and see what happens and notice the differences around you. So just an absolute snippet of the language that we have and the structures that we can notice using NLP. So if this has excited you and this has really switched you on to learning more about language, then come along to one of our live trainings and you will learn so much about the magic that language can initiate. So once again, as usual, before we finish, does anyone have any questions? You can very easily use the chat box just to ask a question. Just type it in there and I can give you a response immediately. So if anybody likes to ask a question, now's the time. Okay, no questions. So as usual, here's the gift. Learn to be a linguistic wizard. Learn to be a real master of language. Learn to communicate really effectively, making yourself a magical influencer, negotiator, salesperson, and you can engage with anyone at any time in a really effective way. If that's exciting to you, then come along to our intensive NLP Coach Practitioner Certification Training. And the next one is the 4th to 11th of March in Rochdale, Greater Manchester. So the investment for 4 accredited certifications at a standard cost is only $1,995, which is really competitive to begin with. And today, and this is for the last time for this training, I have one exclusive price with a £500 discount. And these go very quick. So this is available to the first person who gives me a call after we hang up the webinar. And so that place is available at $1,495 only. And this is how you can grab that place. Give me a call on a landline 0845 467 3039. And that's just a 5p connection fee. And after 1 minute, 5p per minute thereafter. Or mobile. Or you can email me your own number and I'll call you back. Christine@QFScoaching.co.uk. And if you'd like to see more and read the detail about any of our trainings and the schedule and the pricing structure, it's all there at www.qfscoaching.com. So thank you very much for joining me today. The next webinar is going to be in a couple of weeks' time, and I will send you notification of that in the usual way. So in the meantime, I hope you have very, very successful, motivated and energetic couple of weeks, and I will see you soon. So thanks very much for attending, and I will see you very, very soon. Have a good day. Bye-bye.